foreigners will never go beyond Kigali, the capital city. So when they go to Rwanda and they come back, they say, oh, Rwanda looks beautiful, because to them, Kigali is Rwanda. And they go there, they meet government officials. I used to be Kagame's chief of staff, so I essentially ran his enterprise called Rwanda Incorporated. So we knew how to prepare a script, which every government official must tell if you visit Rwanda. It's a very smart endeavor, because you almost get same answers when you go to Rwanda. If people do not keep quiet, if you ask them a question, especially if they think it's a political question, and most of them will keep quiet, they will simply tell you the same version of the story. But I think Rwanda's development is unsustainable, because unless there are basic freedoms, unless we figure out how to begin to reinvent Rwanda's politics so that we have equal space within this enterprise called Rwanda, so that there are no just losers, but we figure out how we can all be winners, it will be very difficult even to sustain even this very shallow economic development that we are talking about. I think I've taken long to make my introductory remarks, but suffice it to say that I think Peter has done an interesting and very useful effort in trying to figure out how we can simply get together, not only Rwandans but others who are interested in Rwanda, how to encourage this whole business of truth-telling. As I've said, it's not that we shall always agree with each other as Rwandans, but when we disagree, it shouldn't be that somebody else should die because they have disagreed. Because for now, that's how Rwanda is. As I keep on saying, I keep on quoting something that the famous Nigerian poet Walso Yinka said. He said, in other societies, saying I'm right, you are wrong is part and parcel of normal life. And in fact, even in our families, that's how it is. Sometimes I'm a minority in my own household. But in Rwanda, it has been turned upside down. It is that if I'm right, you are not only wrong, it is that because you are wrong, then you must die. And that is something very unhealthy. And I believe part of what we are beginning today, hopefully, we shall continue to extend it to other Rwandans so that we can live in a society where each one of us is expected to die a natural death, where we can live long, healthy, and productive lives, but most importantly, live lives of freedom. Because without freedom, I think everything becomes nothing, and I think with freedom, it is possible to imagine many other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we hear from our moderator to put a regional view on it, I'd like to make clear that I'm here because of U.S. foreign policy. When in 2003 I found out that the UN Tribunal had been established specifically to make certain that the U.S. ally would not be prosecuted. Because, of course, if the ally was prosecuted, the prosecution would have to ask the ally, how is it you became such a big military force in such a short time? How is it that there were these ongoing connections between the U.S., between the RPF and the Pentagon that many people don't even know about because they're in those documents? And then, more importantly, how is it that when the reports of RPF crimes were delivered to Warren Christopher, the consultation with Kofi Annan, the documents we also have, were to how to cover up the fact that the RPF was killing millions or tens of thousands of people, it's become millions, at that time. I found from reading the documents that USAID had sent a human rights investigator in to find out about these things, and he came back in September of '94 and said, yes, they're committing many, many crimes. And then we know from the documents also that a cover-up began. And according to Brian Atwood, who was the head of the Humphrey Institute a couple years ago. He said the reason that the cover-up began in September of '94 was because the State Department had not been aware of how involved the Pentagon had been with the RPF in bringing them to power. And once the State Department found out that the connection between the RPF and the Pentagon was as strong as it was, and the RPF had been committing crimes of a massive nature, it was necessary for there to be a stopgap policy to make sure the information was discredited and didn't get out. And that's what's happened in the ICTR. The result of that is that all of the jurisprudence at the ICTR has been bent to fit the outcome. It's meant that the story of what happened in Rwanda has had to be told 180 degrees from the way it actually happened. Because if, in fact, the story is told, and the reason that I was fearful for my life in Rwanda is that the documents take the Rwandan genocide and the reason for the Rwandan genocide directly back to Arlington and directly back to Foggy Bottom. And I think that the sum total of the documents show that. The U.S. has spent nearly $3 billion on the UN tribunal to make certain that only one side gets prosecuted. The U.S. has also, according to the chief prosecutor at the UN, quashed the investigations that she was under, told her that if she didn't turn over her files to the RPF government and stop the investigation, that she would be fired. When she said, I work for the UN, not for the U.S., the U.S. Ambassador Pierre Prosper said, that's what you think, you just lost your job. And so we have in 2003 evidence that in summer of 2003, the United States specifically removed the chief prosecutor at the ICTR and replaced her because she had the evidence to prosecute the RPF and President Kagame. And when she announced it, she was removed from office. Now, the problem that presents for those of us in the audience who are Americans and are concerned about the policy of the U.S. government, the thing I want to leave you with is that what the evidence shows is without the ongoing support of the Pentagon, not the State Department, because the State Department and Pentagon were not in the same place, I don't believe, in '94 based on these documents. But beyond that, that the cover-up has been so extensive since that time that essentially the RPF and Kagame have developed a particular relationship with the United States that allowed them with Uganda, who was the country that helped create Kagame, which was also an outgrowth of Pentagon policy, invaded the Congo in '96, invaded the Congo again in 1998. According to a UN report that was issued in October of 2010, Kagame and the forces sent into other countries are responsible for somewhere between 6 and 10 million lives. The occupation of the Eastern Congo is going on today, occupying an area about 14 times the size of Rwanda. The number of deaths in Rwanda far exceed anything in Darfur. The involvement of Ugandan and Rwandan forces now in the invasion of Somalia, Darfur, South Sudan, and the use of peacekeepers by these governments also has the same character. I'm mentioning the U.S. role in this because many people in Africa don't realize how involved the U.S. had been in this endeavor. And we're going to differ because just because I have these documents and I'm drawing conclusions from the documents doesn't mean that I have the truth ultimately. Because none of us has the absolute truth. All we have is the desire to search for it and the freedom to do it. And if we can do that, and the people who are watching this event around the world understand that there is this other truthful, factual-based reality, it is possible that we can change U.S. policy because it is not in the interest of the United States people to have the United States supporting essentially the destruction of East and Central Africa and the Great Lakes region. So my objective is to change U.S. policy. Not to punish anybody in Rwanda or to claim that I know the truth. But if the documents that describe what happened are not taken into consideration, documents from the UN and U.S. government are not taken into consideration, we're going to get it wrong because everyone in Rwanda was caught up in the war. And what they see about what happened in Rwanda, of course, is affected by that and the pain that they suffer and the loss that they had. And as Theogene said, there's no family that's been without that loss. I'm hoping that our moderator can comment a bit on the international and regional implications of the new information that we're putting before the world today. And I'm hoping that Prime Minister Guled can give us his observations.
Prime Minister Guled.
Thanks, Peter. I think this is one of the most important meetings I've ever been involved in, for two main reasons. I think what has been happening in Rwanda is, as an author said, it's a problem from hell. But we did not have the pleasure of really knowing who the real authors of this hellish experience have been. And I think what Peter has done has helped us and will help us enormously there is no absolute truth in this, to approximate at least what are very important aspects of this unfolding story. And what Dr. Theo has done in coming out openly and probably sharing with the world the role that the present president has done in shooting down that plane. There were suspicions, there were accusations and counter-accusations, but what, from a very authoritative position and perspective, what Theo has done is very astounding. And therefore the experience of Rwanda has very important lessons for not only Rwanda itself, but for the whole region, for East and Central Africa, and probably for Africa generally. And it has very important lessons to be learned in terms of the position of the United Nations and the US government. We are not here to pontificate and apportioning blames. We are not here to categorize anybody as the criminals and those who perpetrated the crimes. I think the story is much more complicated. In the case of Somalia, in the case of the region, the involvement of Uganda definitely complicates the Somali case. I think we have succeeded in self-destruction as Somalis, but the role of Uganda, and particularly the role of the Ugandan forces and that of Burundi, are complicating the problem even further. It appears Somalia now is very much under the mercy of regional countries, our neighbors, whether it's Kenya, we knew of Ethiopia before. But the implications of probably this is a law school, this is not a business school. Probably what is unfolding in Somalia and the region is a more cost-effective way of bringing about, if not change, at least in creating an environment where the people of these countries are really hostages of powers that are not local. It's not an exaggeration that definitely Uganda has played a critical role in what the RPF has done, and